Hello, everyone, and welcome to Be Bold, Fierce, Unstoppable. I'm your host, Zach Lyotis. And today's podcast, we have Ericka Thomas. She's a certified trauma release provider, health coach, nutrition specialist, and a 200 registered yoga therapist with an emphasis in trauma-informed yoga with a degree in communications. What started as a hobby in martial arts more than 20 years ago has grown into a career in the fitness and wellness industry. Ericka made the jump from independent contractor and corporate finance to entrepreneur and business owner in 2019, opening her online studio, Elemental Kinetics, with a mission to push back against the frightening statistics of trauma and stress injury. Creator and coach, she guides her clients off the battlefield by offering an arsenal of tools through her program, Kinetic Grace, Resilience to shake off stress, tension, and trauma without reliving their story. Help me welcome Ericka to the show. Hello, Ericka. How are you?
I'm great, Zach. Thank you so much for having me today.
This is such a pleasure to have you here because there's just so many great things that we have in alignment. And I love that you speak about stress and trauma. Considering everything that we're going through in the world, I know Canada's still in a whole different trajectory compared to the US or Europe. So there's a lot of stress going on in Canada alone. Could we talk a little bit about stress? Because there's good stress and then there's bad stress. And there's what you say as well is injury stress, because the more stress that we carry, it actually gets married into our bodies. So let's talk about stress in general, good stress, bad stress.
Right. So, in the human body, we are designed to be able to handle stress. We're made for that. Actually, stress is it kind of gets a bad rap, right? And if we did not have some kind of stressor, or some kind of activation, none of us would get out of bed in the morning.
Mm-hmm.
And when we talk about good stress and bad stress, I think it's important to kind of separate from those labels of good and bad, because really it's just a continuum of activation. So a little bit of activation in the body is good, right? We have the label of good, right? It is motivating things that excite us or challenge us or help us to rise to some kind of challenge. That feels good in the body if we have to put a label on it, right? But there's a point in our response, in our nervous system response, where we can kind of tip over the edge into too much of that, right? Too much, too fast, for too long. And so those are the kinds of things that we might want to watch out for if we're trying to avoid the negative side of the stress scale. Mm-hmm. But ideally, people are just animals. And in animals, if an animal is under some kind of threat and has to activate themselves to get away, right? We have to run away. They either run away, which is usually the first choice. They run away or they fight, okay? Or they're activated to go hunt food, right? That's basically all the stress does for them. If they're under some kind of threat, if they're chased and they get away, those animals, they shake off that experience. They don't go home and relive it over and over again in their head. Mm-hmm. They literally physically shake their body after they are safe. And it helps to reset their nervous system. But people don't do that. We could do that. We have the capability to do that. But we have socialized ourselves out of that kind of very primitive resilience response, that primitive reset that the body wants to do. And in our modern society, we don't really run across tigers very often. We don't get chased through the woods very often. I mean, occasionally maybe, but that does not happen on a regular basis. We have different kinds of stressors now. It's not always life or death. in the kind of activation that we come up against in our everyday life. But the body doesn't know that.
Yes.
Your body hasn't evolved as fast as our modern world has, as far as matching up the stress and the stress response to it. And that's part of the problem, because we have lost our ability to tap into that primitive reset, that shake and reset that our physical body wants. We've lost that connection there. And so if we can't release that tension that's coming up from whatever stress, like a conflict at work, or not being able to go to work, or losing your job, or having some sort of financial stressor, or a pandemic, or fear of going outside, right? Those things, we don't have a way to shake that off. It doesn't ever go away. There's never an end to that kind of thing. So that energy that builds up, that wants to be released, it gets stuffed down into the body and just layers tension, and it basically tension. It just layers tension upon tension upon tension in the body's physical structures. So muscle, fascia, joints, your gut, your heart, the way you breathe, how you sleep. And then that becomes another type of activation, another type of threat that the body is reading. Like, there's something going on wrong inside of my body. And so now we've got this internal adversarial relationship going on inside of our body that seems like it's separate from what's happening outside. But as we know, everything is kind of connected and overlapped. And
and then you have all these other responders that are happening, and you're wondering, is something wrong with me?
Exactly.
Is something wrong with me, because everything is responding within my body, but I can't put my finger on it.
Right. And your body might be telling you that you are in real danger, but your mind, your rational mind, is looking around you and you can't see any danger. Like, what you see around you, it doesn't look like danger. And so it's very confusing inside the body. It's very confusing.
Yeah, you were talking about fight or flight. So let's talk about the adrenals there, because with stress, our adrenals get really, really bogged up. It's like, when you're saying like, oh, we have all these different stresses and it just keeps on compounding. I always say, like, you're carrying a backpack on you, and you're just adding more stress or more fear or more doubt and stress and stress and stress, especially with everything going, like I said, on in the world. And then we go into this fight or flight mode, but it also, that takes our adrenals, or then we go into adrenal burnout, and then we have no energy, and then the burnout shows up. Let's talk about that for a minute.
Yeah, burnout is interesting. And honestly, I personally haven't looked really deep into the science behind that. As I know that I personally have felt burnout myself. I don't know that if I had shown up at a doctor's office, they would have diagnosed me with something wrong with my adrenals. Sometimes there's a disconnect there also, right?
Absolutely.
When we're under some kind of stress, and the body is somehow sensing that we need to do something to survive, right? Whether that's withdraw or engage or leave, we're going to release all of these stress hormones, right? So cortisol is one of those hormones. Apparently, we only get to make so much of it, and while it's stress is not the only thing that cortisol deals with. I mean, there's, as with everything in the body, that it's never just about one thing, right? It's not the only thing that it deals with. We can overwhelm our system if we flood the body with those hormones for too long. And so physiologically, that's really what's going on. Like, we're just activated constantly on the inside, even when there's nothing consciously wrong on the outside of the body. And unfortunately, you can't think your way out of that physiological response. You can't rationalize, oh, hey, adrenals, I know that you're under some pressure here, let's just relax. It doesn't work that way, unfortunately, because it's a bottom up kind of a process. Mm-hmm. Stress is always a bottom up kind of a process. So we need to give the body a way to reset. We need to give the body what it's asking for, some action to take so that it can let go of that tension in a way that it understands. And sometimes talking about that constant stress that we're under, it is not what the body understands. It's like when you have, it's like a different language, right? The body's language is not our mind's thought language. Okay. So it takes different things for different people. Obviously, there's a lot of different ways that we can do that we can help the body reset. Yeah. Movement is one of those. Another way to communicate with the body is how we eat. That connection, what we put on our plate, that can soothe the body. It takes a long time, but it can do that, right? So how we sleep will communicate safety, although that's a tricky one because sleep is sometimes the first thing that gets that we notice that gets thrown off if we're in an activated state, right? Yeah. Why would the body let you sleep if it's got all these messages that you should stay on high alert? You should be alert. So stay awake. So if you're not sleeping, then now we're sleep deprived, and sleep deprivation becomes another stressor. So it's a very tight connection there between rest and stop and being alert. So we're really ultimately looking for some kind of balance. That's really all anybody actually ever wants, is to find balance of being able to be awake and alert and engaged in your life, and to be able to come back down and rest. And that's where we get into resilience, right? Mm-hmm. That's what we need to practice, is the shift, the in-between rest and activation. That's where we build resilience. It's not being calm all the time, because that's not really realistic, right? To stay calm all the time.
Yeah, I like what you said there, because there's so many different, it's like stress is a domino effect. There's so many other things that come between the body and stress. And I like what you said about animals, that they shake it off. Mm-hmm. And as you're saying that, I'm like, thank God I dance off things. Like, I'll just put music and I'll just start dancing. I get up in the morning, I'll put music and I'll just dance. I'm like, I don't know what I went through while I'm sleeping, but I'm just going to shake this off. I'm going to dance it off.
Yeah. And dance is interesting, because not only is it the shaking, the movement of dance, but it's the rhythm of dance. Yeah. The rhythm part is something that that I think I really wish that schools would keep those music programs in. I think for the stress and trauma informed side of our children, just to be able to give them to communicate with their body in a rhythmic way. I think we've lost so much of that. Yeah. It's very, very important for the body to have some kind of rhythm. And most people don't even think about it like that, right? It's just fun to go and dance. Yeah, but that connection, that rhythm connection, is really important there too.
Yeah, and I think it's really important, especially for women, to move their hips. I found that I hold a lot of my stress in my hips, in my abdominal area. So when I get into that dancing mode, it's all hip movement. It's all like, move the hips, get rid of that. Let's talk about stress and how it kind of finds home in the body, because you help, I guess it's men and women, or just women, go through that clearing of stress in their body without revisiting the trauma. And I know you're a yoga teacher as well. So let's talk about how we hold stress in the body.
Yeah. So we have this really powerful muscle called the psoas muscle, and it is responsible. It runs from about mid back and crosses through the body and attaches to the top of your femur. Okay. And that muscle is responsible for curling you in to a fetal position. It is a protective muscle. evolutionarily, right? So it is designed to lock down here into this little tiny ball. If you're going to make yourself into a ball, for those of you who are not looking at us right now, and that muscle, that psoas muscle, is one of the key. How should I put it? We often call it our stress muscle, the psoas muscle, right? And that is where a lot of our tension from any kind of stressor can go. Now, that wouldn't be an issue, except that most people spend most of their hours, their waking hours, in a seated posture also. Right now, we didn't used to be like this. We didn't used to be as sedentary as we are, but being in a seated posture shortens that muscle also. So the stress, the external stress that the body experiences, will tighten that psoas muscle subconsciously, unconsciously, because the body wants to protect you. So think about it like this. If let's say you get up in the morning and you're gonna, in a normal world, go to work and drive to work, right? And you sit in your car, maybe you have a 45-minute commute, and there's lots of traffic, lots of you have to stay very alert. I used to commute for about 45 minutes and it was not relaxing at all, right? Construction, city driving, finding a parking place, and every single one of those things that comes at you, subconsciously in the body, we are curling up and curling up and curling up. And then you have to uncurl yourself to get from your car to your office. And every single moment in your day, as you're sitting at your desk, phone calls coming in, deadlines, whatever it is, these are modern types of stressors, right? And you're reinforcing that collapsed state in the hips with your posture, on top of the way the body wants to react to those things naturally. And then we do the same thing in reverse to get home. And then we sit on the couch for another 3 hours. And now we're just reinforcing a physical reaction to stress, being curled up like that. So if we're talking about the psoas muscle, right? When we are working in, let's say, a trauma-informed practice, we keep those series of poses very, very simple and very focused on hip openers, where you are reversing that position of the body, that flexed forward position. And we hold for maybe what I would consider longer than a typical yoga practice might hold some of those hip opening poses. And we allow practitioners and students and clients to titrate the sensations that come up, because you're not alone in holding tension in the hips, right? That's where I hold my tension. I would say I'm a pretty flexible person, but that's where all of my tension goes, right? And so I could still look flexible on the outside, and still that psoas muscle would be like locked in tight, okay? And that happens to other people too. So when we titrate movement to release that tension, you sink in a little bit to some of these hip opening poses, let's say like a kneeling lunge that doesn't require a lot of balance, like external balance and difficulty or challenge. And then we pull back a little bit, and then we sink back in, and then we pull back a little bit. So when you're titrating movement, it's giving agency to the body. Like, you don't have to force yourself into this position and stay. You can come in a little and then relax out, and come in a little and relax out. And it is that gift of moving into a place where you're feeling kind of stress tension on the muscle, and then the permission to come out, that allows that primitive connection through the muscles and the vagus nerve to say, hey, you know what? Maybe I don't have to hold on to this tension anymore, because she's going to let me out. She's going to give me a chance to come out. And now I can maybe trust her a little bit more. And that's the same kind of thing that we do in trauma release. So trauma release exercise actually induces a tremor in the body. The shake, that same primitive shake that animals do to shake off after an attack, trauma release exercise does the same thing. It comes in very, very quietly. We keep the intensity of all of the exercises very, very low. And we bring about this tremor that comes directly from our brain stem and the 10th cranial nerve, and kind of resets our parasympathetic nervous system and safely self-regulates that stress response. Trauma release was developed by David Berceli, and he uses 7 different exercises to kind of bring that tremor to the forefront and let the body release that tension. And then in that process, the practice, the real learning comes when you stop the tremor and when you can start the tremor, because that is where people who get stuck in stress injury, that's the problem. They can't find a way out of it. They need to find a way out of that tension in the body in a way that the body understands. It's purely a physical action. And so while some people in that process will realize certain memories, or sometimes they will make connections with their past, stories from their past, it doesn't always happen that way, and it doesn't have to happen that way. It isn't required for the body to understand that, hey, I don't have to hold this because we're not there anymore. So I don't know if that.
Yeah, no, I love that. There's so many, like, as you're speaking, I see a child's pose, and a wide open leg child's pose that came to me.
Mm-hmm.
And then as you're talking about tremors, I'm almost seeing, like, I think it's a tree pose. I can't remember. No, it's the one-legged standing pose. It's almost like I felt like the tremor happening to me, because when I'm in yoga class, I'm like, she's probably talking about that tremor where my leg is shaking and I can't get it. I'm just like, okay, just let this go. Whatever it is, just release it. It's not serving you. Just stand strong. So when you're speaking about this, I'm like, I've been there without even consciously even understanding what that even was happening to my body, other than my body shaking to bring me into a solid form.
So this is, so it's a little different than that. So what you're describing is a postural tremor. That is, right? So we are in a pose, or let's say, for some people, any kind of exercise can get you there, like holding a plank, right? Holding a plank for extended periods of time, or downward dog, or chair pose, right? If you're holding that, at some point your muscles are going to be like, why are we still here? And so, right. I don't know what yours say to you, but that's what mine says to me.
Yeah.
Right?
Why can we get out of this? Like, this is not fun anymore. And I'm like, just chill out.
I know. Right. So those are postural tremors, and we're very familiar with those, right? That's the work hard, no pain, no gain. We can do it. Push through. But trauma release exercise actually comes at that from the other side, from the ease side.
Okay.
Right. So, so we use a scale of 1 to 10 of how much effort you are putting into the exercise. So there's a series of seven exercises that start from standing, and we end up down on the floor on our back, right? So we want to keep that we use those exercises in order to help people get into their body, to develop a sense of presence in the body, which is something that is missing in for many people, because we don't even, especially stress, injury, that kind of thing, like we don't even realize what's happening in our body, like from here down, from the neck down. We're very disconnected there. So it takes time to kind of re-establish a relationship within the body. So we use these really simple exercises. They're all yoga poses. They're all yoga. Everything is yoga, as you know. Yeah. Like it's 5,000 years old. You can't, there's nothing new under the sun. Right? Yeah. So
it's all recycled stuff at the end.
It's exactly. So we use those exercises to help people find a sense of presence. And we do that by asking them to not count the repetitions, but to stop when they reach a 7 on the scale of 1 to 10, to stop then, not to start then, to stop then, right? And then after a certain point, we only look for a 5 on your scale of 1 to 10. Now, this is very difficult for people to understand. A scale of 1 to 10 of your effort, how hard you're working physically, and then how hard are you working mentally, and how hard are you working emotionally? Because those things matter just as much as your physical effort in the pose. So let me take your example, Zach, because you described a tree pose, right? When you're standing in tree pose and you're starting to feel that postural shake in the leg, that challenge, that real effort, where you have to think about it to hold that pose, right? If you can put yourself back in that place, where would you say you are on a scale of 1 to 10 physically to hold that posture?
A 5 or a 6.
A 5 or a 6.
Thinking and analyzing a lot of things.
Right. And then as far as how challenging that is for mentally and emotionally. Now, not every time do emotional things come up in physical postures, but sometimes they do, as you probably know. And so we often ignore that part, right? We ignore that emotional response to the physical place where we are, because we want to get whatever physical benefit is out of the posture.
Yes. And this is what people don't realize, that when we go through any sort of exercise in general, we're dealing with a lot of emotional, like you said, that trauma, that emotional trauma that we're holding into our muscles. I remember when I was in yoga class once, I just started bawling my eyes out. And I was like, what is showing up? Like, I'm getting goosebumps saying this to you. What is showing up right now that I'm not conscious of? Yes. And I love that you said, like, you talk about the body, you talk about the emotion, you talk about the mind, because there's a disconnect with many people, and it's about bringing everything back together again. Yeah. And this is what I love about the trauma work that you're doing. It's about bringing you back together again, away from that stress, away from that trauma, really allowing you to connect and engage in what's really going on inside of you. Like, just listening to you, I'm like, yep, been there. Yep, cried that one through. Yep, felt that one too. Yep, felt the tremors. I don't know what poses she's talking about. Let me tell you, there's times I was just in Shavasana. Yeah. And my body's doing all sorts of things, not like twitching and twitching.
Yes. And that's exactly it. That's right there. That's where that's where trauma release exercise tries to bring people, and in easy ways. So I think for a lot of people, especially in the fitness industry, and the wellness space, I mean, there's a lot out there about, high intensity exercise for stress relief, right? I hear that a lot, and a lot of people push that because there are some studies that say that there's a benefit there, but it's a surface benefit. It's a conscious mind benefit. Like, you can go to a great boot camp class and feel really great afterwards mentally. The body doesn't necessarily read that kind of exercise as a release, because it just adds another level of tension to the body. You can't release tension in the body by adding more tension to the body. It just has to have a way to relax out of it. We don't live in a world that really smiles on that. We celebrate hard work. We don't celebrate rest.
That's the crazy thing. And really, when you're doing like a hit, like I know you did martial arts for 20 years and brought you down this journey. I did kickboxing for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And I know when I was in kickboxing, if I was stressed, because I was used to working as a dental assistant at the time, and that's just a stressful job on its own, like, you know, working in someone's little mouth and then holding their hand, you're so afraid. And then I go to kickboxing because I'm like, I just got to get rid of this. But that's when I noticed I was going through a lot of injury at that time. My back was always getting like, you know, I felt the ache in my back because I just wanted to keep on kicking that bag so hard in order to like release whatever it was. But then when I got into yoga years later, my first class was Kundalini yoga. And I was like, what is this guy thinking? Like, seriously, nothing is happening here, buddy. And then next thing you know, I always say this, I don't know if I even said it on this podcast or like on this Bold, Fierce, Unstoppable show, but the floor sucked me up. And that's when it took me on this galaxy ride. And that's when I realized laying down is probably the best benefit to mind, body, spirit connection, because it just brought everything together. It's like the Shavasana. When people say, I rushed out of Shavasana, I'm like, oh no, I sit in Shavasana for like 10, 15 minutes. Sometimes they're mopping the floor and I'm still there.
You know, it's interesting that you bring that up, because that was always something that was really interesting to me when I was early on starting to teach yoga. How many people just refused to stay for Shavasana? And we really only were there for 5 minutes, you know, but I would have mostly instructors that would say, I can't do yoga. I can't hold still. I'm like, what? What do you mean you can't hold still? You can teach like 4 back-to-back HIIT classes, but you can't hold still? I think that somebody's trying to tell you something. Like, you should be able to be still in your body. You should be able to be in your own head for 5 minutes. I mean, that's, for a lot of people, that is the work. That is work to be with themselves and quiet in their own head, because they're never quiet in their own head. So that's exactly what we're talking about bringing that mind and body back together. I mean, you really can't, or shouldn't, I should say, you really shouldn't be moving unless you are connected with what you're doing, mentally connected with what you're doing. And that's where people do get into that injury thing. I've been there. That punching that bag feels amazing in the moment. It really, really does. And it makes you feel so powerful afterwards, right? And when I was in martial arts, my Taekwondo master, he was from India, and he always told me that his first of all, he always told me that martial arts came from yoga, number one. And number two, he said that all of his black belts eventually became yogis. Now, this was a long time ago, and I laughed at the time. I'm like, yoga is too easy.
I love when you say that, then you bring them to a class and I'm like, oh, I think it was this hard. I'm like, I know. It's an Olympic sport. I used to tell my people, like, this is an Olympic sport.
Yeah, it's crazy. And so it was always really nice for me to see when people finally figured that out. That's just, as an instructor, it makes you feel really good when somebody in your class finally is like, oh, wow, I don't know what we did today, but it was, you know,
so good.
Yeah, so good. Like, you don't have to know. Your body knows. You don't have to know. You don't have to put a label on it. Your body knows what it needs.
And that's so true. Yeah, when I first started doing yoga many moons ago, I got into more an intense yoga. And that's when I kind of omitted the Shavasana. I was like, I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. I don't have time for this. And then I'll never forget, I went back to yoga like years later, and I can't remember even what pose it was, but I ended up flat in Shavasana. Like my body was like, I don't want to do another pose. I
Mm-hmm.
don't want to move. I just need to lay here. And I was kind of fighting that battle within myself. Like
Mm-hmm.
it was an inner struggle. And this is like, I guess this is stress and trauma, because I was going through some stressful moments at that time. And my body was just like, no, I just want to lay here. I don't want to do anything. Oh, I was doing Bikram yoga at the time. So,
Yeah.
and Bikram's tough.
Yeah.
Bikram is tough. That's where
Yeah.
I got a lot of my other work, mental stuff. But it took me out. And I remember that class, I came out and I was like, what a waste of my time. And something inside of me said, that was the best time ever. And I was like, okay.
Yeah.
It never makes sense until you give it time to make sense. That's like stress. It's like trauma. It's like the buildup in our body. Everything that you mentioned that we've spoken about, things don't make sense until you give it that opportunity to make sense and stop running away from it.
Yeah, it's integration, right? The world moves so fast. If we don't take the time to let what we're doing soak in, we may as well not even do it, really, because it really, the body needs to be integrated. And that's one of the things that we bring into trauma release exercise and also trauma informed yoga is extended periods of that time to integrate whatever it is your body has to teach you. And there is that deep internal wisdom, and we squash it all the time. I feel myself do that all the time. Like if I don't have time to work out for 2 hours, then I may as well not move. But hey, I would rather lay on my mat. If I can make it to my mat, that's a win.
Right.
Right. And
Yeah.
yeah, for sure.
It's all the programming. And do you find with all the programming that's going on in the world and how we are perceived to be, what success means to so many people, do you think that has a lot of stress that people hold on to as well?
I think so. I think, that's a great way to put that as programming. I mean, almost everything that we are exposed to these days is very manipulative,
Yeah.
I think. And we have to be careful with that because we have like 90,000 thoughts in our head every day. Most of them are repeated from yesterday, and not many of them are our own. We have to be careful about whose thoughts are we thinking every day? Where did we get that? And that actually influences and like exactly what you said, programs us to behave in certain ways. The way we see our business, the way we see our interactions with other people, the way we have relationships with our significant others or children or whatever. We get those ideas from everybody else, right?
Right. I know. It's funny that you're saying this because this morning I woke up and I had these thoughts in my mind. And I'm like, this doesn't belong to me. And I'm like, wait, let me ask this question. Does this thought belong to me? And I hear no. Does this thought belong to someone else? Yeah. I'm like, okay, so why is it coming to me? Because it's useless to me right now. Okay, I dissolved this thought. And then a new thought came up. And I was just like, why is this even coming up? So I went through that this morning. So it's interesting that you're bringing that up. These thoughts come up.
Mm-hmm.
And then I thought to myself, where am I holding this in my body?
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, for me, it's all digestive. It's all digestive. Would you say women hold stress in their body differently than men hold stress in their body?
I would agree. I would probably agree with that, except that I don't know a whole lot of men who would acknowledge that they hold stress in their body. Men and women are just different. So I say that with all love,
Yes,
with all love in my heart. We as women are not just little men. Okay. We don't have the same physiology. We don't think the same. And that's good, right? Men think differently than women. They behave differently. They handle stress differently. And Okay, so let me back up. I am the oldest of 4 children, and I have 3 younger brothers. So I have experience with boys. So they're they are they I'm just saying, right?
Yeah.
Non-romantic experience with boys. And all 3 of my brothers happen to have served in the United States military, the Army. My son is serving in the Air Force. My husband was in the Army as well. And there's a lot of stressors in the military. Obvious things, PTSD, and just things that most civilians can't wrap their head around, right? There's it's just such a big topic. But in dealing with them, men are raised differently. They're raised to react differently to what comes up in their body, whether that's mentally, emotionally, or physically. Okay. And that makes a difference in how they react, how they react to a situation, and then how they react to when they finally wrap their head around, hey, something might be wrong, you know? So it may or may not, everybody's different, of course. It may be because they're socialized differently. Men are socialized differently than women as they grow up. Although, I hesitate to say that that's your parents' fault or something like that. I just really think it's just a cultural thing, right? It's just a cultural thing. But also it's a hormone thing. Like, they're just different. They're going to react differently. Yeah, and that's okay, right? It's okay to have that happen. That as far as where men and women hold on to stress in their body, I think for men, it's physically, they may, instead of being a specific area, like, hey, this is all in my hips, it may be more of an all over kind of chronic pain thing. Okay. And for women, you're not the first person to say something to me about digestive issues. I personally, I take everything in my gut. It's like being punched over and over and over again. And that's how my body reads every kind of threat. Mm-hmm. So that's a personal thing. I don't think that's unusual at all. And I think the gut brain axis is incredible. And I think that's how we read other people's energy. Absolutely. And I don't know if, at least the men in my life, the men that I have worked with, I don't know that anyone would admit that, hey, I just had this bad feeling in my gut that this was going to go wrong. Like, I just had this gut feeling. We have all this language around it too, right? I have this gut feeling. Yeah. But of course, that's too woo-woo for
I know, trust me. I know. It's crazy. That's
right. Crazy. Right. And it's interesting because I used to think that stress, chronically elevated toxic levels of stress, actually shut down your digestive system. Mm-hmm. And to some extent, you could read it like that. But actually, the vagus nerve, neurologically, it aggregates all of those sensations and kind of separates your gut from your brain, and so it doesn't work quite right. When we're talking about trying to reintegrate the mind and body, yes, we need to allow that to happen, just so that our digestive system will work, so that our heart will work, properly. Otherwise, it's getting messages or not getting the correct messages through that vagus nerve superhighway that runs up and down throughout the body. So it's a fascinating thing, and it can be healed, Mm-hmm. So especially things with the gut, it can be healed. It just takes longer than taking a pill. So
Right. It's,
yeah.
it's not no quick fix. I could tell you that right now.
Right. It's
It's really
absolutely not.
something.
Absolutely not. But there's
Yeah.
so many things, so much you can do. There's so
Mhm.
much you can do. And you have the power to do that. I believe that very deeply, that each individual, every human being has that innate ability
Mhm.
to find mm, and and elevate their own healing process. In fact, they're really the only people that can do
Yeah.
that.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I love that you said that because I believe every individual could heal themselves better than anyone else
Right.
because you know your body better than you could even describe it. So
Mm-hmm.
for anyone out there that's going through someone, know that you are your greatest healer. Someone may guide you through the process. You may borrow someone's eyes to see a path in front of you because you can't see it because of the level of stress that you're holding on to. It may be trauma that you're holding on to, maybe program. It could be so many different things. But just like Ericka said, you have this innate ability and inner power or strength to get you past anything that you're going through in life and bring you in that mind, body, spirit connection and bring that intertwining within yourself and let go of the disconnect of all that stuff that doesn't really matter. So Ericka, for anyone that's listening out here right now to this amazing podcast that we're having, what what are some techniques that you would give in order for them to, maybe right now they're going through stress and they just need a little way of releasing this stress as we're having this conversation? What are some techniques you could give them?
All right. So there's so many things out there. And before I give you my favorites, I just want to say not everything works for everybody.
Mhm.
Um, but that doesn't mean something isn't out there that will work for you, right? If there was only one thing that worked, there would only be one thing. But there's not, there's a bunch of things. So
Okay.
for me, the very first thing that that I use personally and that I share with my clients is the breath.
Mhm.
And in yoga, we talk about how the pose, any pose, begins and ends with the breath. Your
Mhm.
practice begins and ends with the breath. And it is the fastest way to communicate with your nervous system,
Mhm.
how you breathe. it is it's actually an amazing thing that you don't have to think about breathing, but you can. But
Right.
you can change it. Okay. And by changing how you breathe, you can either calm your nervous system or activate your nervous system. Okay. So every time you inhale, your heart rate increases. Every time you exhale, your heart rate decreases.
Mhm.
Okay, so that's a direct line to your heart. And simply bringing awareness to how you're breathing, number one, is usually the first step. Most people don't really pay close attention to how they're breathing until they can't breathe well, right?
Yeah, that was me. That was me when I did that first Kundalini yoga class.
Yeah,
My instructor told me I wasn't breathing correctly, and I started laughing. I'm like, who doesn't breathe correctly?
I
So when
know.
you said that, it brings me back that memory, and I'm like, who doesn't breathe correctly? And then he's like, yeah, bring awareness. And he goes, only babies breathe proper.
Yes.
Adults breathe in their chest. And then I was the
Yes.
one walking around with my hand on my belly
Oh yeah.
in my late teens going, this guy's losing his mind, but he's so right.
Yeah, it's so true. It is so true. And when we experience stress, that's even more so. Like we shrink our breath capacity,
Yeah.
and it's when you notice it, it's like, oh my gosh, I'm not using three-quarters of my lung capacity.
Right. Yeah.
That's crazy.
No.
So just bringing awareness to how you're breathing and like what you just mentioned, just by placing your hand on your stomach and seeing if you can just watch how deep your inhale comes,
Mhm.
right? If you need to close your eyes, you can close your eyes or just soften your gaze, but you can inhale and just notice without changing anything first.
Mhm.
Just notice where your breath goes. And then notice how long your exhale is.
Mm-hmm.
Because if we can shift to a more exhale centric kind of breath, we can shift towards that parasympathetic calm nervous system, right? So we're just going to notice where that breath is going, and then we can start to play with it. Maybe you count how long your exhale is and see if you can match your inhale to your exhale. So let's say it takes the count of 4 to breathe out. Let's see if you can do a 4 count to breathe in. And we just watch that. And then I ask my clients to bring in the ujjayi breath, the whisper breath at the back of the throat, because that vibration here, we've been talking about tremor and shaking and things like that, but the vibration is where we can connect with our parasympathetic nervous system. And we can get that very, very simply through the throat. So it's kind of like a Darth Vader exhale, right? But it's really soft. So you can do it very loudly, but really it's an inhale and an exhale through your nose. And then you just allow yourself this whisper on the exhale. So it's a little bit louder exhale or a little bit louder on the exhale, this whisper. And you can feel the vibration there. Mm-hmm. And that vibration is interesting because it can lead you into some other breathing techniques, like bee's breath is one of my favorite, because again, that builds that vibration all up through the face and the sinuses, right? So bee's breath is super simple. Like the super simple way is to just kind of close. I've got my little headphone things in here right now, but you just kind of close the flap of your ears just gently. You can feel how your voice actually, like it brings more volume from your voice. But then when you breathe, we're going to hum on the exhale instead of just having that whisper. So we take it from a whisper here to a hum. So on the exhale, it's an inhale and just hum. And then we bring that into the sinuses a little bit. You can also, depending on where you are, you can also either, just kind of place fingers here, or this is something that I use in child's pose, and rest your forehead, your third eye, on your hands, stacked hands, or on a block. And so that gives you another point of vibration there. And that vibration then can, I think of it like, I always think of it like a reset, like that. It's like an internal shake for the nervous system. Your vagus nerve comes right into the back of your face. There's all these little fingers. It comes right into the back of your face and your cheeks and your sinuses, into your mouth and your jaw, up through your neck and your throat right here, really close to the surface. And so those are those types of things, the breathing in general, and then moving into some of those breathing techniques, are great simple tools like that you can use right in the moment of a stressful place. Right? So you communicate with your body that, hey, we are safe here right now, right? This might be a tough situation, but we are safe, because that's the difference. The body says you're not safe. In reality, it might just be, this is just hard to be here, So we don't want it to be hard to live in our body.
No,
right.
Not at all. Not at all. And when I just practiced that bee's breath, and you said like to hum through it, I actually felt a vibration. So that vibration feels so good. So if you're going through anything, try the bee's breath. You could actually use your thumbs. For those of you that are not watching the video of this podcast, you could probably even put your thumbs and close your ears. And what Ericka was showing is that she had her fingers on her third eye. So just bringing it all together, just do whatever is easiest for you, but really bring that breath there. I really like that. I'm going to use that one.
Yeah, I love bees breath. It's actually really great to help kind of settle you before sleep. That's one of the things that I use for folks with insomnia. You know, it's something you can do while you're lying in bed if you can't quiet your mind. Those racing monkey mind thoughts, you know, it's great for that as well. And then we talk also about, as far as other tools to use, movement. So you mentioned right at the top about dance and things that feel fun for you, right? Some people really have a problem with dancing. Because they feel very uncomfortable, right? You want to feel comfortable doing whatever the movement is that you're choosing to do. So if I took somebody who was really, really uncomfortable doing yoga, yoga would not be the type of movement for them because that would just add another layer of stress, right? Mm-hmm. So we want to find something, but walking around the block with their dog might be better, right? Mm-hmm. Something outside in nature, where you can lift your eyes to the horizon a little bit and be in the sunshine, in the fresh air. Those things, the body craves that, believe it or not. Like we are not meant to sit in a cubicle.
No.
So those kinds of things can really, really help. It sounds trite. I know it sounds like, ugh, she's telling me to walk outside again. Like, but it's a rhythmic, yeah, it's a rhythmic movement. Mm-hmm. Walking is rhythm. And if you're not a runner, then we can walk. If you're not a walker, then maybe something else. I don't know if you have access. Maybe people have access to the water. Swimming is great. It's very calming. Mm-hmm. If you're not afraid of swimming, right? So, right. Yeah. This is why this is so personal. This is why healing stress injury should be approached in a very individual way. Everybody comes to where they are in life from a different place. And we have all these different experiences that make up who we are. Mm-hmm. That make us this beautiful individual. And what happened to you doesn't have to be your identity forever. We aren't meant to live in the past. And sometimes we can get stuck there, and all it takes is just a little nudge. We can take a different turn, take a different path, try something new, and just kind of move forward out of that. So I hope that's helpful for.
Yeah, I love that. And what I kept on getting is even bike riding for some
yes people. Oh yes. So I actually am a big cyclist, a road cyclist. And that has been out of necessity because I used to be a runner. I used to run marathons. I used to run every single day. I would put in 40 miles a week. Wow. On top of my 24 hours of fitness classes every week. It was not, I wouldn't recommend that. That
just sounds exhausting and stressful.
It was, but I thought, the interesting thing is I thought that because I was so stressed out doing my group fitness thing, that I needed to do something for myself. So that thing was running. So instead of releasing tension, I was just adding different kinds of tension. And that's why I said earlier, like, that doesn't work. That just puts the body into some kind of state of overload. And I paid the price for that. I physically paid the price for that. My hormones were completely jacked up. And I had terrible, terrible, terrible gut issues that none of the doctors I went to could figure out. And it was so frustrating. And it sort of tipped me over into this flip-flop between depression and anxiety, with sprinkled in with a little bit of panic attacks. And it was not fun to be in this body. On top of that, I had all those thoughts that come up that say, hey, you're still not strong enough.
Interesting. Those
So,
damn thoughts, Ericka.
I
Those damn
know.
thoughts.
They're wicked. They're wicked, wicked.
Yeah, that's why we have to work through them. This has been incredible. You've given us so much incredible wisdom here and helping us move forward. I love the bees breath. I'm definitely going to try that because I love that vibration it gave me through my body. My favorite breathing technique is the Nadi Shuddhi, the alternate nose breathing.
Yes, I love that too. I
That's
love that
my
one
favorite one
too.
'cause I find it brings me to a different woohoo elevation. So that's why
Well,
I love that breath.
don't they also call that skull shining? Isn't that like
Oh, I've
another
never heard
term for
that.
that? Maybe that's just in America. I thought that was like a thing, like you're shining your skull. I thought that's what it feels like to me when I
It
do
does. Yeah, there's a
that.
huge light that comes to your head. Like that's
Yeah.
why it takes me into a different woo stage when I
Yeah,
do it.
absolutely.
So
Yeah.
that makes sense. Skull shining. That's
Hmm.
amazing. But this
Hmm.
has been such a pleasure having you here. And trauma and stress is a lot of things that people are going through right now, finances, confusion when it comes to uncertainty, especially divorce being on the rise right now, the tension that we're holding in our body. I mean, there's so much that every individual is experiencing right now in their own journey through life. But as Ericka said, there's simple techniques to get you out of it. If you're looking for someone to guide you through the process, all of Ericka's information is going to be in the show notes below. You could contact her there, meet her on socials, connect with her. She also has a free offer to give you for one class. Get in there, release the stress, release the tension. One thing I'm going to add is get off your phone, put a timer on your phone because that could add added stress on you. If you're on socials, time yourself on socials. Don't worry about the FOMO that you're going to go through when this first happens. That could
Hmm.
cause another layer of stress and tension as well. So
Hmm.
there's so many great benefits and techniques that you can use. I know there's a lot more, but Ericka's the expert in this field. And so if anyone is interested in connecting with Ericka, get through the stress and get through the trauma, like I said, everything is going to be in the show notes below. Ericka, thank you so much for being on the show today. This has been such a pleasure. I could keep on talking with you about this topic.
I loved my time with you, Zach. This is great. I have to have you on the work end too because I think we ought to do a swap.
Absolutely. That sounds great. Let's do it.
Awesome.
Everyone, thank you so much. Like I said, everything's going to be in the show notes below. Get rid of the stress, get rid of the tension, get rid of all that mind chatter that gets to you. The I'm not good enough, I can't do it, I'm not worthy. Whatever's showing up is there to tell you to just be in Shavasana, even though your mind is fighting that. And Shavasana is just laying in corpse pose. That's another vision, or just laying on the ground at the end of the day. Until we connect again, have yourself a good day. Bye for now, everyone.